Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that the cash in your wallet no longer works anywhere you go. Not at the grocery store, not on public transport, not even at the bank. Because physical money has quietly slipped into history, replaced by invisible numbers flowing through servers, algorithms, and networks you never see. And while that might sound like a distant science fiction future, the truth is that this transformation is already happening around us right now. City by city, system by system, transaction by transaction. And today we're stepping deep into the rise of the cashless society to uncover why governments and corporations are pushing for it, why millions of people embrace it without hesitation, why others are deeply uneasy about it, and what this shift means for freedom, privacy, and control in a world where money no longer exists in your hands. So if you want to truly understand where money is going and how this change could quietly reshape your daily life in ways you've never considered, make sure you stay with me until the end. And if you value deep, future-focused stories like this, take a moment right now to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's explore what's really happening beneath the surface of the modern financial world. Because to understand a cashless future, we first need to understand what money has always been. And surprisingly, money was never really about paper or coins at all. It began thousands of years ago as a simple system of trust between people who needed a way to exchange value without relying on memory or favors. Long before banks existed, long before governments stamped symbols onto metal, humans traded goods directly through barter, grain for tools, livestock for labor. But barter was slow, inefficient, and fragile because it required both parties to want exactly what the other had at the same time. So gradually, societies began using objects that everyone agreed had value: shells, beads, salt, precious metals, not because they were magical, but because they were scarce, durable, and trusted. And that idea of trust became the true foundation of money. Coins made that trust portable, paper money made it scalable, and banks made it centralized, allowing entire economies to grow beyond local communities. Yet every major change in how money worked was met with fear and resistance. When paper money was first introduced, people believed it was worthless compared to gold. When banks expanded, many feared their savings were no longer safe. When credit cards appeared, critics warned they would destroy personal responsibility. And now, as cash itself begins to fade from daily life, we're witnessing the next evolution in this long story. One where money no longer exists as an object at all, but as pure data, stored, tracked, approved, and moved at the speed of light. And this transition didn't happen overnight. It crept in slowly, starting with plastic cards replacing bills for convenience. Then online banking, allowing people to move money without stepping into a branch, followed by mobile payments that turned phones into wallets. And before most people realized it, tapping a screen became easier than counting change. And convenience, as history shows, is one of the most powerful forces driving human behavior. Because every time a new system saves time or effort, people adopt it without asking what they're giving up in exchange. And at first, going cashless felt harmless, even liberating. No bulky wallets, no exact change, no waiting in line, just quick, frictionless transactions that fit seamlessly into a fast-paced digital world. But behind this convenience lies a profound shift, because cash is anonymous, cash is permissionless, cash doesn't require approval from a network, a company, or a government database. And when cash disappears, so does the ability to transact privately. And that's where the story becomes far more complex. Because a cashless society isn't simply about replacing paper with pixels, it's about restructuring how power, access, and control operate within an economy. In a fully cashless system, every transaction leaves a footprint. Every purchase becomes a data point. Every exchange can be tracked, analyzed, categorized, and potentially acted upon. And while this data can be used to prevent fraud, reduce crime, and improve services, it can also be used to monitor behavior, influence choices, and restrict access, in ways that were never possible when money existed outside digital systems. And yet, despite these concerns, the push toward cashlessness continues to accelerate. Fueled by governments seeking efficiency and transparency, corporations seeking profit and data, and consumers seeking speed and simplicity. And what makes this transition especially powerful is that no one is forcing it all at once. There's no single moment where cash is officially banned. Instead, it fades through quiet policies, closed bank branches, cash-free stores, and digital incentives. Until one day, people realize they no longer have a meaningful alternative. And this gradual shift is what makes the cashless society so difficult to fully grasp. Because it doesn't arrive as a revolution, it arrives as an upgrade. And as we move forward, it becomes essential to ask not just what we gain from a world without cash, but what we lose, and whether the trade-off is worth it. Because history has shown us time and again that every transformation in money reshapes society itself, redistributing power, redefining freedom, and altering how individuals relate to institutions. And the question we must now confront is whether the next evolution of money will serve the people who use it or the systems that control it. And to truly understand how close we already are to a cashless world, we need to look at how subtly digital money has woven itself into everyday life. Because unlike past revolutions that arrived with dramatic announcements and visible upheaval, this one slipped quietly into our routines, first as a convenience, then as a habit, and finally as an expectation, until using cash began to feel slow, outdated, and almost inconvenient. And today, when people pay for coffee with a tap of their phone, split bills with an app, order groceries with a voice command, or send money across continents in seconds, they rarely stop to question what's happening beneath the surface. Because digital payments feel effortless, almost magical, yet behind that simplicity lies an enormous infrastructure of banks, servers, algorithms, verification systems, identity checks, and corporate platforms that mediate every transaction. And the more we rely on these systems, the more invisible they become, which is precisely why the transition toward cashlessness is so powerful. Because it doesn't demand ideological agreement, it only requires convenience. And once convenience becomes normalized, resistance fades, and slowly the idea of cash itself begins to feel unnecessary, even suspicious, as if carrying physical money is a relic of a less advanced era. But the reality is far more nuanced. Because a cashless society is not simply a world where people prefer digital payments. It is a world where digital systems become the only viable way to participate in the economy, where alternatives quietly disappear, and where access to money depends on technological infrastructure and institutional approval rather than physical possession. And this distinction is crucial. Because there is a profound difference between choosing not to use cash and being unable to use it at all. And yet most discussions about the cashless future blur this line, presenting it as an inevitable march of progress rather than a structural transformation with deep social implications. And to see how this transformation unfolds, we can observe how cities around the world are experimenting with cash-free environments, where stores refuse cash, public transport systems require digital tickets, and even small street vendors adopt QR codes instead of coins. Not because they hate cash, but because digital systems integrate seamlessly with modern logistics, accounting, marketing, and data analytics, making them economically attractive for businesses. And as businesses adopt these systems, consumers adapt in response. And as consumers adapt, institutions begin to design policies that assume digital participation as the norm, creating a feedback loop that gradually marginalizes cash users. And over time, what began as an optional innovation becomes an invisible requirement. And this is where the psychological dimension of money begins to shift. Because cash is tangible, it has weight, texture, and presence. It creates a direct sensory connection between effort and value, while digital money feels abstract, distant, and fluid, which subtly changes how people perceive spending, saving, and debt. Because when money becomes numbers on a screen, It becomes easier to spend, easier to borrow, and harder to emotionally grasp. And this psychological shift has already reshaped consumer behavior, contributing to rising levels of digital debt, subscription-based lifestyles, and frictionless consumption, where financial decisions happen with a swipe rather than reflection. And yet this same abstraction also makes digital money extraordinarily powerful, because it can be programmed, automated, tracked, and integrated into complex systems of governance and commerce, enabling capabilities that physical cash could never support. And this is why governments and financial institutions are increasingly interested in developing centralized digital currencies, not merely as replacements for cash, but as tools for policy, regulation, and economic management. And at the same time, corporations see digital payments as gateways to data, loyalty, and ecosystem control, allowing them to map consumer behavior with unprecedented precision. And so the cashless society emerges not from a single conspiracy or coordinated plan, but from the convergence of multiple incentives, convenience for consumers, efficiency for governments, profit for corporations, and technological feasibility for engineers, all moving in the same direction. And as these forces align, the transformation accelerates, quietly reshaping the architecture of money itself. And yet beneath the surface of efficiency and innovation lies an uncomfortable question that few people ask directly. Because if money becomes fully digital, who ultimately controls it? Who decides who can access it, who can spend it, and under what conditions? And while today these questions may seem theoretical, history suggests that when systems gain new capabilities, they are eventually used. Not always maliciously, but often pragmatically, sometimes benevolently, sometimes coercively. And the cashless future therefore forces us to confront a fundamental tension between convenience and autonomy, between efficiency and freedom, between technological progress and human agency. And as we continue this journey, we must explore not only the benefits that make a cashless society appealing, but also the hidden costs that may only become visible once the transition is complete. Because the story of money has never been just about economics. It has always been about power, trust, and the fragile balance between individuals and institutions. And in the next phase of this transformation, the promises of a cashless world begin to shine brightly, revealing why so many people welcome it with enthusiasm and optimism, even as its deeper implications remain largely unseen. At first glance, the benefits of a cashless society are not only easy to see, but difficult to argue against, because digital money promises something people have always wanted more of: simplicity, speed, and security in a world that already feels overloaded with friction. And when transactions become instant, borderless, and automated, everyday life begins to feel smoother, almost effortless, as waiting in lines disappears, exact change becomes irrelevant, and payments happen in the background while people focus on living their lives. And for many, this convenience is not a luxury but a necessity, especially in fast-paced urban environments where time itself feels like a scarce resource. And beyond convenience, cashless systems offer a powerful sense of safety because without physical cash to steal, lose, or counterfeit, the risks associated with carrying money appear to diminish. Wallets can no longer be emptied by pickpockets. Businesses no longer need to store large amounts of cash on site, and transactions become traceable, reversible, and protected by layers of authentication, creating an impression of control and reliability that cash simply cannot match. And for governments, this traceability presents an appealing opportunity to reduce crime, combat tax evasion, and bring informal economic activity into the official system. Because when money moves through digital channels, it leaves a record, and records make enforcement easier. Allowing authorities to identify fraud, monitor suspicious activity, and recover lost revenue, which in theory can be redirected toward public services, infrastructure, and social programs. And from this perspective, a cashless society appears not only efficient but fairer, as everyone plays by the same transparent rules, and this promise of fairness extends further into financial inclusion. Where digital payment systems can provide access to banking services for people who were previously excluded due to geographic isolation, lack of physical bank branches, or limited documentation, allowing individuals to store money securely, receive payments, and participate in the economy using nothing more than a mobile phone. And in many developing regions, this leapfrogging effect has already transformed lives, enabling small businesses to grow, families to receive aid directly, and workers to get paid without relying on unreliable intermediaries. And for businesses, the shift toward cashless operations streamlines accounting, reduces operational costs, and integrates seamlessly with inventory management, customer analytics, and global supply chains, making commerce more scalable and data-driven. While for consumers, digital payments unlock a world of interconnected services, from budgeting tools that track spending automatically, to subscription models that provide access over ownership, to instant international transfers that collapse distance and time. And on a macroeconomic level, a cashless society allows governments to respond more quickly to crises, distributing stimulus payments instantly, adjusting monetary policy with precision, and stabilizing financial systems through real-time data, which became especially visible during moments of global disruption when physical infrastructure faltered, but digital systems kept money flowing. Reinforcing the perception that cash is not only outdated but fragile in a digital world. And as these benefits accumulate, the argument for cashlessness begins to feel overwhelming, almost inevitable, because who wouldn't want a system that is faster, safer, cleaner, and more efficient? And who wouldn't prefer a world where money simply works without friction? And yet, beneath these undeniable advantages lies a subtle shift in how power operates, because efficiency is never neutral, and systems designed to optimize flows inevitably centralize control. And while the surface narrative celebrates empowerment and inclusion, the underlying architecture of a cashless society concentrates financial activity within a small number of platforms, institutions, and protocols, each with their own rules, incentives, and vulnerabilities. And this is where the story begins to complicate itself. Because the same traceability that reduces crime also eliminates anonymity. The same automation that simplifies life reduces personal discretion. And the same integration that enables global access also creates single points of failure. And as digital payments become the default, opting out becomes increasingly difficult, because participation in modern life itself begins to require compliance with digital systems, identity verification, and data sharing. And this gradual normalization masks the fact that cash once served as a quiet safeguard, a universal fallback that allowed people to transact without permission, without accounts, and without leaving a digital trail. And as that safeguard fades, the question is no longer whether a cashless society is efficient or innovative, but whether it remains resilient, inclusive, and aligned with human values when things go wrong. Because history teaches us that no system, no matter how advanced, is immune to failure, misuse, or unintended consequences. And as we continue forward, the benefits that once seemed unambiguously positive begin to reveal their shadow side, inviting us to examine not just what a cashless society offers, but what it quietly takes away. As the idea of a cashless society moves from possibility to reality, what ultimately matters is not whether the technology works, but whether the people living under it remain empowered rather than managed. Because when money becomes fully digital, it no longer exists outside systems of permission, identity, and oversight. And that means access can be delayed, restricted, frozen, or shaped by rules most people never see. And while these powers may be justified in the name of safety, efficiency, or stability, they quietly redefine the relationship between individuals and the institutions that govern value itself, turning money from a neutral tool into a conditional service. And this doesn't mean a cashless future is inherently dystopian, but it does mean it demands awareness, debate, and accountability, because the choices made now will determine whether digital money expands freedom or narrows it, whether it serves people or disciplines them, and whether convenience becomes a benefit or a dependency. And as cash slowly fades from daily life, the most important currency may no longer be money at all, but understanding. So if this video helped you see the future of money from a new perspective, share it with someone who still thinks this change is far away. Leave a comment with your thoughts on whether a cashless world excites you or worries you. And subscribe for more deep dives into the forces quietly shaping our future, because the next transformation won't ask for permission, it will simply arrive.